Welcome to another episode of Everybody's Got Something. I'm your host, Seth Hoffman. Today our guests are musician Lonn Calanca and farmer mystic Andrew Stone. Let's get into it. Let's have a good time. Well, as you know, we live in a world with lots of heaviness, things happening, which is why I am honored to get to sit down with many of the people in this world that I admire and just talk about what inspires us, fuels us, and good in this world. Lonn, thank you for being here. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great.
Good.
And it's sincerely my pleasure.
Well,
and I'm a huge fan of yours.
Well, back at you.
For many years.
Well, it's
perhaps decades.
Go on.
Decades.
Okay, actually, for this show, I think I'll let you actually. No, just kidding. Well, I'm very touched because I'm a fan of yours as a musician and just who you are, and I'm just excited to get to hear a little bit more about your story. I know many people know you, seeing you on stage, appreciating your music, but they don't know much about the man behind the music. Many people do, but many people don't and would like to know. And first question is just, how did you get into what was your first inspiration of how you got into the world of music? I know there's much more to you than music, but let's start with that.
Well, I think the music thing is all encompassing, so there's lots of facets that can be tied to things. So I think my earliest, I've always liked music. My parents were a big influence. They turned me on to lots of great music when I was little. And I want to say it was like Star Wars. Like the score.
That's pretty powerful in music.
The score from that movie, like my earliest memory of just hearing that orchestral.
Yes. Feel that in your whole body.
Yeah, and I always was just drawn to music, and just. And
when you were younger, did you imagine yourself as a performer? Was it something?
Never. It was total.
Like your childhood
fantasy.
Friends would be like, what? Lonn,
I just didn't grow up in it where there was music and people listened to music, but the leap from listening and being the observer to being the performer, I mean, that just seemed, I grew up in a little town. There wasn't even a music store there.
Wow.
So I would stand and play the tennis racket in front of the mirror and just pretend. It just seemed totally impossible that I would ever be able to perform.
Yes.
So,
well, let me ask you this. I have many things I want to talk. One of the questions I want to, or just talk about, is there's a lot of people who play music, a lot of people who front bands. One of the things that I really admire about you and just appreciate is, from being at your shows, is that you create, it's not just the sound, it's the culture around it. It's the experience of being at your shows. I know people who have, follow certain bands like the Grateful Dead and other things where they talk about how it's bigger than the music. It's the experience. It's the people who are at the show are part of the show. And I really, before I really knew you, experienced that with your band, Let It Grow, and of course the Lonn Calanca band. But I don't think that's something you can even intentionally do. But I wonder if you could just comment or talk about what the whole energy of it, because it's something that you can feel when you're at the show, and I think that's one of the draws to when people come to see and hear you and what you create. I wonder if you could talk a bit about that.
Well, I think there's so with the band like the Grateful Dead, which I just use that as and now there's many examples and many types of music. I think that what they brought into my life is something, growing up in the United States, a lot of, my family were immigrants, and they didn't, in order to integrate into the United States, they kind of put down their culture and adopted the customs of the people around them. And so I think I grew up feeling like I really missed that. I think there's an innate need for that community and that culture, and a lot of that is the celebration, the community, music, food. I think our ancestors, no matter where you come from, that was a central part of life.
Yeah.
And so through the Grateful Dead was just, I think, the American version of that, where it felt like I remembering what it was like to be in community and celebrate together through music and
when were you introduced to the Grateful Dead, and just an awareness of what that culture and that community feeling?
It's funny because in those days it was totally underground, and I remember I was 16 years old, and I went with my friends and their older brothers who knew about it, and I was mad. I was upset that that had been kept a secret for so long, and because it felt so good to be in that space with people, and I think that's the
And where was it? This was in
this was in
Chicago?
Wisconsin. This was Alpine Valley.
Alpine Valley. I'm from
Alpine
Wisconsin.
Valley.
That's where I saw my first ever concert of my
Really?
life.
I didn't know you were from Wisconsin.
Yeah. From Milwaukee.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Van Halen was my first ever concert.
Awesome.
But anyway, so there you were, Alpine Valley.
Alpine Valley. So and it's beautiful. It's those rolling green hills and forest, and I just remember getting out of the car, and there was a drum circle happening somewhere in the distance.
Wow.
And it just turned on a switch, like hearing that drum, like there's something in, I just gravitated to the drum circle, and people drumming around a fire. I'm like, this has probably happened before, in our ancestral memory of that experience. So that was like the Grateful Dead cultural. It's like brand new and totally ancient at the same time. So what happens, I have lots of thoughts and theories about music, but it is so much a community thing. So when you're performing, you're really the opportunity. There's kind of different. There's music that's like entertainment, and you're just an observer. Yeah. And then there's what the Grateful Dead did. Of the first time I experienced that, there's lots of situations where this happens. It can happen in any type of music. Not necessarily the Dead, but that was the first time where it's not just the musicians are just there to facilitate. They're conduits. Yeah. And it's like it becomes, everybody is part of it. Right. So it's like
this thing you can feel, like this exchange of energy, and it's like, oh, that
I
sounds
call it
hokey,
the
but
psychic generator. That's my terminology. It's a psychic generator, because the band is putting out energy, the audience is receiving it, and they're like taking it in, and then they're like giving it back, and then it's just like this, like a steam engine, and it just builds and builds and builds. And all of a sudden, it becomes way more than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. Yeah.
It just elevates it, because it's not just one person who's performing. It's the entire experience.
Right. So it's like you're doing a duet with the audience in a way.
With 20,000 people. Like the Grateful Dead thing. So.
Yeah. Well, that must have been something for you to experience that as an audience member, and then years later to be on the stage and experience it again in a different kind of way, but to feel that same thing.
It's been a long journey to be able to assemble the things that are needed to.
And maybe you can tell us about it, because one of the amazing things is how you bring people together, both the people at the show, but the variety and incredible talent that you perform with. Maybe you can tell us a little bit just how do you bring together, and how you make that happen.
Well, I consider that to be like my biggest skill. Yeah. Like, I'm an okay musician, but I'm good at bringing people together. Yeah. I think that's when I really stand back and look at the success of what I've been doing. It's just creating the space is creating a container for that to happen.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I think, you know, one of the things that I always really liked about the Grateful Dead is that everybody was welcome.
Yeah.
You know, there was like this aspect of it where there didn't feel like, you know, growing up in high school in a small town, there was all these cliques.
Yeah, only the cool kids, only
you
the
know,
jacks.
and it was like it didn't matter, and
Yeah.
it was such a relief.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
so it's like everybody's welcome.
Yes.
And
Beautiful.
I think that people like that.
I think that is
That's a big draw.
Brilliant observation and a lesson, you know, just in life, and because it seems like people are as divided now as maybe ever, but when you go to, you know, whether it be a concert or some type of thing where people can share in a common energy of something like that, and you realize, hey, we're connected, and
It definitely levels the playing field.
Yeah. And so, what are just say there's someone out there starting a band, how do you manage, because with, you know, all these different personalities, you know, everyone has an ego to some extent, there's different, you know, how do you kind of orchestrate, there's of course the musical aspect, but just the community within the bands, and is there anything any tips or wisdom to share about that? Or challenges even?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's like any kind of relationship with a spouse or your family, and there's ups and downs. I mean, you have to, I think, unconditional love and patience and a lot of self-reflection. It's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
You know, it's extremely difficult to keep a coherent relationship going, and there's ups and downs.
For sure.
But I think it's just the love of what is being created. I don't know if I have any advice. I mean, rock and roll bands are notoriously self-destructive.
Yeah. We destroyed that hotel room.
You know, so if you put the music first,
Yeah.
you put the music first before any of the, you know, your personal needs.
Sure.
And that seems to be a good adhesive to like maintain a group.
Yeah. And I from just even observing you from stage, it seems like in an unspoken way, there's a clear appreciation you have for all the people you're on stage, just kind of with different looks to different people. It just seems like there's a very warm, loving appreciation, mutual appreciation. I think that comes out in the music, and of course then comes out into that feeling that everyone has who's dancing or even sitting, whatever they're doing, they can feel that, which is a special thing.
I think another component of that is to surround yourself with musicians that are better than you. And everybody's so talented and just amazing people.
Yeah.
So it's like one of the, they could any one of those individual people in the band could be a standalone show.
Sure.
You know?
Sure. Yeah.
So there's a lot of mutual respect and love.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Oh, beautiful. And so you were telling me there's also going to be kind of like a documentary in the works about. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, there's a documentary filmmaker, director David Garcia, who was not familiar with the Grateful Dead thing, and he is absolutely fascinated by the culture of it. The fact that there's all these, you know, there's over.
And he's incredibly talented. I've seen some of his work.
I know, he's an amazing artist.
Yeah.
So there's 800 Grateful Dead cover bands in the United States. It's all very well organized.
Yeah.
So there's that component of it. Those are a lot of the things that you mentioned that are really interesting to him about the culture, and also, you know, kind of being a member of our community and watching me go through some really hard times, and then the story of how that community of people, the music, not just playing and performing, which I think has some very healing aspects to it, but also the way that the community rallied around me and my son. So there's that story of, what is this Grateful Dead community music phenomenon, and how have I used it to kind of move through a impossibly difficult, tragic time in my life, and then also just telling that story, telling the story of what it takes to keep operate a band at this level. How I've done that while raising my son. So it's the way that he's tied it together. I mean, I would have never even thought of
so
that.
we're in the production. When can people expect to see it? Or is it's to be determined?
In the fall. So they've kind of, I mean, it's a very, very professional operation. They've the union film cameramen and women, and so they've been following me around.
Okay.
All right. In my house and in the car and
bathroom.
At this festival, not in the bathroom. Well, maybe, but they edit, so they just film and film.
Well,
and film.
I can't wait to see it. It sounds
I
incredible.
can't wait to see
I
it.
mean,
there's a great trailer. There's the trailer available.
Okay. Well, when we post this, we'll again attach the link if it's something people
I'm happy to share
see.
that with you.
Well, I know you're going to be sharing an original song.
Song.
But before we play it, I just want to again thank you just for being an inspiration, because anyone can do things when all's going their way and life is smooth and cherries and roses. And I know you've been through just the depths of challenge, loss, and the way that you've continued to make music. And I'm sure music has been a profound
it definitely
healer.
saved my life.
Yeah. So I'm grateful that you stayed with it and have. Through your struggles, you have given, I know, so much healing to so many people through just seeing you keep going and thriving with it, and just really giving medicine to people. I know when I've been to your show, it feels that way. It just what you create, and just you're doing a tremendous service by honoring your heart and your soul. And we could have talked this whole time just about your parenting, because I know, and I'm glad we had a chance to talk a bit about that, but I just a great respect for you as a human, as a parent, as a band leader. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about the song that you're going to be sharing with us.
Okay, well, this is a song that I wrote during the pandemic time, where I found myself suddenly with all this time to be creative. And it's inspired by, I moved to New Mexico from the Midwest, and it's inspired by the Southwest, and inspired by the idea of mortality and growing older, and just the duality of life and death, and the beauty in that. And it's this song that I really like. I had a moment of inspiration, and it kind of just all came in about 10 minutes.
Beautiful. So. All right, well, we look forward to hearing it, and thanks for being here with us, and we look forward to following what you're doing. And just all the best to you, and strength be with you and to your wonderful son and all your family and the community you create. And look forward to knowing you for a good long while.
Thanks for having me here.
All right, let's listen to this song.
you're out on your own. Take you more for less. Spin the wheel, time cannot heal the foolish man's success. Hopes and dreams, endless it seems, the aching hole within. Hopes and dreams, endless it seems.
All right. Well, it was an honor to get to talk with our buddy Lonn and hear his song. And now we are here with another legend, hero of mine, Mr. Andrew Stone. Andrew, how's your day going? What you been up to today?
Well, it's been an amazing day. I don't know if you know about the Q Lab.
Tell us a little bit about it.
It's a makerspace, which is a place that has all the tools you could possibly need for welding, woodworking, ceramics, whatever. And it's been around Albuquerque for 14 years. It's just sort of a community-based working space that people come and join. And we're getting kicked out of our building, so we're looking for a new one. And we found one right up on Central. So
how long between the problem and the solution?
It was just when you put together that many really smart people who love to teach other people how to do things, it's like their whole attitude is everything can be solved, everything can be engineered, everything. And when I say they, I mean we, and I mean you, and whoever wants to join. So it's beautiful because being close to the university, it'll give access to all the people just leading it, and it'll be like an incubator at a level that's very community oriented.
Oh, beautiful.
So I'm excited about that.
Well, good luck, and I'm glad the solution came and you're with us.
And then you called me and I said, come on down.
I know, what a treat and an honor.
That's the ahad, that's the mystery that we can be open to every day.
I love that about you, and I love that about the universe, and the fact that our other guest was Lonn, who you are
Lonn, I love Lonn. I always have been close to him.
I do as well. One of the things I think many people appreciate and admire about you is just your life story, the journeys you've been on, but I think what you've created. If anyone who's ever been in your space, it's really unlike anything I've ever experienced. And especially here we are in Albuquerque. You'd think this is someplace out in the middle of the mountains, 100 miles out of town, but here in our humble Albuquerque, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your space, how you created the backstory, because it's just a very special story and a very special place. All the things that happen and get created there. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit.
I guess there is a link to Lonn in that. In 1968, the Grateful Dead came to Cincinnati, and I was only 12 years old. So I didn't get to go to that show in the teen center because they were just playing little venues then. But I heard that the parents didn't like it, so that meant it must be cool. So I did become a young Deadhead and got to see them and got to feel that energy of community. And I was a young hippie because I was 13 in 1969.
That's young hippie. Yes.
And yet so by the time I was 16, I had read On the Road, I'd read Aldous Huxley, I'd read Alan Watts, I had, read the Beats.
By the time you were 13?
I was 16.
16, okay.
And that was the year I dropped out of high school after 10th grade and went to South America on a Wanderjahr, as they call it, where you just go to experience the culture. I would teach English because that was about the one skill I had.
Yeah, yeah.
And traveled around the Sierras of the Andes, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador. And that's where I saw the family farm. That's where I saw land-based cultures that had an acre or two, had the orchard, had the llama and chickens, and that was that planted the seed of what was possible in terms of the hippie notion of returning to the land. And yet, I was an urban guy. I came from an urban area.
Yeah. And were you interested in this? Did you sort of discover this? I mean, did you go there looking for that, or you didn't even know what you were looking for?
I knew I was looking for not being just another prototypical American. Okay. I knew I wanted to be something or special. I had a calling somehow. And so returning, I immediately...
And how long were you
I was there for about a year and a half.
A year and a half.
And so I get my GED.
And this is before email and FaceTime and all those things.
Oh my God. I wrote my parents every week.
Okay.
And I didn't really run away, but I ran towards something.
Yes.
And when I came back, I knew I had to move to a Latino part of the USA because I love that culture. The corazon is the big thing. Maybe not very materialistic, but very much community-based and ordered. And so my cousin had lived in Albuquerque, and I'd hitchhiked out here. And I get here, I open his door, and a guy is totally naked, one of their friends, and I go, I fucking arrived.
I'm at the right place.
This is really the right place. I was really looking for the counterculture that a conservative town like Cincinnati really didn't have so much. Yes. And so I went to UNM and studied architecture, but always with the notion of passive solar was the thing. Finding out about...
And this is back then, because back then, I mean, that's been
this is mid-70s.
Concept. I mean, now you hear, but back then, I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I don't really remember hearing much about it.
And it was the cutting edge thing that people were doing in New Mexico. And to be part of that was really big. And so my studies were like, how can I take a little house in Albuquerque and make it totally solar? I had chickens, I had goats right in the student ghetto. The whole notion that the solution to our whole energy crisis or whatever is for each of us to be micro farmers and raise our own eggs and things like that. And it's sort of an integrated vision of town and country. And so that is the seed that led to our little farm in the North Valley.
And when you first came to that land, what was there? What did it look like when you?
Well, what was cool is a friend of mine flew he was the photographer for one of the local engineers that did flybys to take aerial photographs.
Okay.
So they were all fields that had been abandoned because.
And you still have that?
Yeah, I have those. So. It's really amazing to see the forest that's there now. Yeah. And to not fight the elm trees, which everybody curses, and yet they grow and they provide amazing shade. But also to be able to have planted an orchard. Yeah. So we've been there 43 years.
Incredible.
And so that is, if I have a recommendation, it's like if you can put your roots down, do. Because then the harvest is great. Yeah. In time. and to be able to create this oasis in the Emerald City, as our friend Enrique de la Madrid, poet, professor, calls Albuquerque the Emerald City.
Oh, really?
And it's made green.
Emerald City.
Where did we hear that before?
We're
Toto and Toto too.
Wow. Yeah,
and it's a beautiful thing because this is a desert we're in.
Yeah.
And the narrow band of the Rio Grande, with our irrigation systems and the acequias and the MRGCD, we have thousands of little farmers flooding their land and filling our aquifer. And so a lot of people think, oh, what a waste of water. Not at all. We're catching the water as it rains down on us, comes down the river, and we're creating this basin of water that is pumped up to the heights where everybody's growing their beautiful green trees. And so it's really fantastic to look at early aerial photographs of Albuquerque and to see what all of us have created here.
Yes, yes.
And so I'm very much into urban ag. That is a recurrent theme, and involved with the Rio Grande Community Farm, which is a very cool thing. It's down by Anderson Fields, where that was. From the city has given to this nonprofit the ability to have farmland for anybody who wants to. So and the people they like to serve are people, some young men with disabilities and autism, to give them a grounding into the earth. The vets, returning vets who really need to work on their PTSD. Yeah. There's nothing like touching the earth, growing things.
Yeah. And I think they've even done studies that when you walk through a forest, there's, I don't know what it is, but there's this
the
medicinal things happen.
It's just you're reconnecting. And I think that's the thing that we're finding is we're on this beautiful planet. This is the rediscovery of indigenous knowledge by the Western mind.
Yes.
So we pushed harder and harder into the science, and what do we find? Quantum physics. What is quantum physics? It is the most Zen thing there is. Yeah. Everything is connected. Yeah. And so it's the time where we have many challenges in this world, and then we have many answers. Yeah. And the answers are what our forefathers and our indigenous friends already know and have kept alive for us. And so it's a time of honoring what used to be called backwards. That is just modernity speaking. Modernity is in hospice right now. I heard one woman philosopher say. And so we are the shepherds bringing, basically just rerouting all the old knowledge back.
Yes.
And whether we get it from our yoga, our meditation, or whatever it is.
Yes. And how do you see, because you're someone who I admire because you have skills in so many areas, architecture, farming, yet you also were in the heart of the technology world as well. How do you see, some people are all technology and never been in a forest. Some people are like, I will only camp, I will never use a phone. How do you see those from your experience? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your experience and how you see it all maybe working together.
Well, I'd already been doing design build, which is, something that as a trained architect I could do, that wanted to be hands-on, to actually design for people and then do the Adobe building and the woodworking, kind of a full service, that whole vertical thing where you're top to bottom, you're the laborer and the architect, kind of destroying hierarchy, not wanting the hierarchy, just saying, no, that's wrong. We're all equal. We're all every man and every woman, and connecting with that. So that led me to visit my friend in the School of Architecture, Dick Nordhaus, and he shows me this little thing, and this is 1985. It's a Macintosh. And he goes, look, we're drawing. And my drawing skills were so poor that I was just like, I need this, the computer. So I got into it, using it for design purposes first. And then I was like, well, what's under the hood? How do I make these things run? And so I had a 27-year career working with Steve Jobs, with Next Computer, which very few people know about, but more will learn about it. It's been a secret that Steve was away from Apple for 10 years in the trenches, building these amazing high-tech computers and then getting rebought by Apple. And so the story gets folded in because it wasn't all flowers for Steve there. It was very challenging.
And there's some things you learned from him, or?
Oh, absolutely. I learned that everybody needs a salesperson. Artists like us. We need somebody who, and I tried to learn some of those skills, but he allowed really smart people. He always hired people who were smarter than him, and he wasn't afraid of that. And he knew, and a lot of us were definitely on the spectrum a little, and that's becoming more and more normal or more spoken about. But all my friends at Syndia Labs and in software, they're totally high functioning Asperger. You know, it's like super focused. So they can do stuff. So the question is, how do you ground that? What's the other part so you're not just all in your head? And yoga's been a lifelong friend for me, to try and remember that there's more serotonin in your gut than in your brain. And when people say, I got a gut feeling, that's real. That's like, you got brain down there, buddy. Listen to your brain. So, the software, basically, we're going to need technology. There's 8 billion of us. We're going to need technology and the wisdom of the elders together. And how that gets blent, I think, is, Lonn doing his music. That's amazing. It's ancient stuff, and yet he's got those wah-wah pedals and things that are killer. So I think that's our challenge in this generation, is to really pick and choose from the technology. So I was one of the first people to have an application for the iPhone for Twitter. And so Twitterator, was a big hit and big success. And I came to realize that social media was not creating community. It was creating disinformation and envy.
And almost ways of dividing people.
And it was becoming a dopamine rush thing where people weren't paying attention to the trees and the garden. And so I had to do a little detox off that. Social media, is sort of like, the ego is it's a fragile little construct that is propped up in our culture because we have a certain competitive thing. But I remember in South America, I'd be with a group of people, and it would be like I was with one bigger person. It was not just about the individual. And I was like, that's really cool.
So how, in the state of the world where it seems like there's around every corner some awful things happening, and one of the biggest things is just the intense division, and how are we going to solve some of these problems or get through this when everyone is so divided? So in these last couple moments...
Well, who wait a minute. Who profits off of the division? I'll tell you who.
Please.
Divide and conquer. That's always been the order
so how do we
of the control.
What are
every person you see is part of you.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And have compassion for the fact that they might have been inculcated to have a more conservative background.
Yeah.
Or whatever their beliefs are. And this has become super fragile once you understand that many of the protesters at the universities, they're not students at all.
Yeah.
They're agents provocateurs.
Wow.
This happened during Black Lives Matters. The people smashing the window were not
Yeah, I heard they
the
would like
community.
set bricks out for people in this.
They would, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there are people who profit off of division. And there's media companies that think you will click and stay engaged when you're outraged.
Yes.
They are whacking your amygdala, the part of your brain that's fight or flight. So, and we don't want that. We're trying to get into our bodies, not ready to run.
Yes.
So my advice is the Pharaoh is in us. It's us with our silly notions about being separate or being a pure vegetarian or whatever it is. All those things are constructs that we need to dissemble, and we need to acknowledge that everybody has a role, and that a really functional society does have some conservative voices.
Yeah.
Because they have something to say.
For sure.
We need to be able to listen again.
Yes.
And I don't know, and I already cut you off, so.
No, well, I mean, I think you hit it on the head as far as I think this idea. I think the left is like, oh, we need to convert everyone to be left. The right, we need to convert everyone to be right. When really, I think you really said it is the left will be stronger with the ideas of the right and vice versa. In all these areas, we think we're so divided. If we can stay in conversation,
people.
Exactly. I always say we're all better off when we're all better off. You know.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got the big pile and your neighbor is starving, you're not really better off. You know, and so if we can kind of keep
if
that
we like,
in mind.
I got a good cliche.
All right, we're gonna end with a good cliche and some hope. Let's hear it.
Each one, teach one.
Each one, teach one.
And it's just going to be each of us taking the lessons and the resonance of what lifts us up.
Yes.
And sharing that.
Yes.
And not paying attention to all the voices that are saying, you know, you must radicalize yourself here or there.
Yes.
Open to all of it.
Amen. Well, thank you for being
Seth.
one of my dear teachers.
You're awesome.
And thank you kindly. And I think if we all can recognize that everyone's our teacher, we're students always, and you know, stay in conversation, stay listening to each other, and each one, teach one. Let's use the resources that are out there for us.
Let's do things as a community.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right.
We shall.
Well, let's take a little bit of this. Keep hope going strong and stay together. Together we're stronger. And I'm gonna stay optimistic in these times. And it's inspiring to hear your story and to know you. And we're just gonna keep moving forward.
Thank you, Seth.
All right. All the best to everyone out there. And we're all each other's teachers and brothers and sisters, and I hope the very best, all that you're going through. Just stay well, follow your heart, do what you love, spend some time outside. We'll see you next time.
Everybody's got something that nobody else has got. Everybody, you're the only one.